Greetings, everyone. This is the Hipster Snek, and for this Halloween lineup, I wanted to do something a little bit different. See, I'm kind of a horror buff, but also a horror snob at the same time, and sometimes some truly amazing and imaginative ideas come from the world of indie horror. And while that certainly gives me a large pool of possibilities to pull from, I thought I'd make this a top 10 list with a special caveat. This is a list of RPG Maker horror titles. What that means, for those who don't know, is the games will appear as if they were made in an old-school RPG framework, even if most of them don't actually play like traditional RPGs. Also, it doesn't need to be specifically the RPG Maker software to qualify. Any similar building engine is perfectly acceptable, and I'm just using it as a catch-all term for the sake of this list. So, simply put, the rules are just that it needs to be an RPG Maker type experience, and it needs to be a horror game. Why this specific subset of indie horror? Because I really like these games and have wanted to talk about several before, but each of these games can easily be completed in between 1 and 4 hours each, so it's difficult to make full-length reviews for games this short. So instead, we're counting down my top 10 picks. As always, links to the downloads, as most of these are freeware titles, will be available in the description below. So let's begin. Number 10. Ao Oni. Literally translated as Blue Demon, the title can actually be found in a wide variety of games and scenarios now. But for the sake of this list, I'll be specifically talking about the original game in the franchise in its most recent up-to-date incarnation. While it's undergone numerous updates and iterations over the years, the core mechanics and ideas remain intact. A group of students visit an abandoned mansion on the outskirts of town, following up on rumors of hauntings to see it for themselves. But it turns out that within is the titular Blue Demon, or to be more accurate, Blue Demons, plural, who hunt our protagonists, Hiroshi, Mika, Takeshi, and Takuro, over the course of the story. This game is actually considered a classic by many, so you might be surprised that I'm setting it so low on the list. Honestly, it's because the game is a bit on the predictable side, and I had the most fun with the game while using the South Park mode cheat, where the characters themselves point out some of the game's habits, like using meta elements of the game's framework, like the text boxes, to load in the Blue Demon unseen. But I do find it an interesting title, and it's definitely worth playing. Pick it up for yourself and make your own opinions. Number 9. The Witch's House. Another staple of the genre, The Witch's House is about a young girl, Viola, visiting a mysterious old house out in the woods, because as this top 10 list will show, that's always a great idea, alongside an equally mysterious black cat. Once inside, she must survive innumerable death traps that, most of the time, you won't be ready for and you'll just get killed by. I have to say, this game loves its some instant death traps, and one of the things that sets it low on this list is the fact that you won't be ready for them. On the one hand, I respect the game and its you-could die at any time mentality to keep the player on its toes, but it hinges too heavily on trial and error, so mechanically a lot of the horror is going to be dulled by the repetition you'll inevitably face. But if you can look past that, there is a pretty engaging story to be found that's topped off with some well-executed twists that make seeing the story and its many gory executions of the protagonist all the way to the very end. Number 8. Hello? Hell-O? One of the shorter games on our list, you take the roles of Kazuki and Akari, each taking turns as protagonists in a small, singular room for the game's duration. The idea being that the situation changes little by little each time you try a new action, and each of these ties into one of the game's 30-odd endings. Each action, or inaction, taken on the player's part teaches us more about Kazuki and Akari's relationship and about the strange situation they suddenly find themselves in. To go too much further into the story would be telling, as it can easily be cleared 100% in less than an hour, but it's an engaging story where I genuinely felt for the couple, and I wanted to see them work out, strange as the situation has been. Give it a try for yourselves. Number 7. Paranoiac. A game that does the is it real or all in her head kind of storytelling way right. Paranoiac stars Miki Takamura, gloomy novelist galore, dealing with depression as she moves into her late aunt's house 3 years in the wake of said aunt's suicide. And while she finds some measure of solace in busybody neighbor Shinji Miura, things turn from weird to weirder still as supernatural forces begin moving in around Miki, who finds no support from a verbally and psychologically abusive mother, Minako. Defying all explanation, strands of hair begin appearing around the house, and strange echoes haunt the heroine from sources unseen. Before you can say, maybe it's not real, a strange, dark monster begins hounding the player in a suspenseful and wonderfully written story. I cannot recommend it enough. Number 6. Hawk 51. Okay, I'm cheating a little bit with this choice, as Hawk 51 is definitely built with comedy in mind, not horror, but it has a lot of homages to horror titles, so I'm calling it close enough. Playing as H. Hawk Hawkins, a Canadian novelist traveling through the United States in order to get to a book signing, suddenly having his plans taken off-road as his car breaks down for mysterious reasons. Unable to get it moving again, he seeks out help, only to witness the breakout of an invading alien parasite. Quickly arming himself to deal with the worm-like invaders and chalking his preparedness for that moment to binge playing video games like Resident Evil, he chooses to take the fight to the aliens. The aliens, as it turns out, are actually all thirsty green alien girls who want him to, and I'm quoting the game here, clap their cheeks. Not persuaded, Hawk decides to become a one-man wrecking crew and save the world from these invaders in this short, fun, and inspired little action title. If you can get through this goofy game and not smile once, I feel bad for your absence of a soul. Number 5. It Moves. An adaptation of the creepypasta Bedtime, this haunting game tells the story of a young boy and his frankly terrifying dreamscape he's forced through each night. Kicking off with the protagonist being moved into a room to call his own, having previously shared one with his older brother, the 8-year-old soon finds that dreams can be truly terrifying things. The game has several chapters, each taking on different dreadful and deadly dreams with dastardly designs for the hero to take on. And by take on, I mean usually run away from, but hey, that's horror in a nutshell, right? It's a dark, atmospheric, and nerve-wracking adventure that begs you to try it out for yourselves. Number 4. Mermaid Swamp. A game that only recently came to my attention but immediately captured me completely is the charming and macabre title of Mermaid Swamp, which recently got a remastered edition. Following 4 vacation and college kids and what looks to be a setup for a generic slasher and yet somehow isn't one, we meet Rin, Seitaro, Yuka, and Yuta. We play the role of Rin, a bit of a valley girl, after our car breaks down in the mountains adjacent to a swamp. A friendly enough old-timer finds the kids stranded and offers to help, giving them a roof over their heads before suddenly having business elsewhere and ultimately leaving them to their own devices. Before they know it, the 4 are overwhelmed in supernatural forces, some of which give Rin unsettling nightmares about being forcibly held underwater, and Yuka suddenly ballooning as if she was a waterlogged corpse despite still being alive, and everyone going more than a little bit crazy over the course of the story. With no evident way to escape the mountain without benefit of a map, a mermaid's curse looming over their heads, and a mystery surrounding both the building they're staying in and the nearby dilapidated mansion not too far away, there's no shortage of mysteries awaiting Rin. Can you escape with all your friends alive? That's for you to find out. Number 3. Off. Okay, I'm cheating a little bit again here, but I can't help it. It's really that good. A bizarre, surreal, dark, comedic, existential, and overall weird RPG coming to us from France with strong religious underpinnings can't help but be included in this list. The strange world made up of the 4 first elements, being meat, metal, plastic, and smoke, haunted by ghosts who are hunted down by a mysterious, almost messianic figure known as the Batter. It's so strange that even describing it feels like a fever dream. The game is fairly short, and with a little experimentation, the alternate endings and best grinding areas show themselves, and the boss fights are memorable and hauntingly beautiful. It is absolutely worth revisiting it to this day. Number 2. The Crooked Man. The first in a quadrilogy of equally amazing games, The Crooked Man is one of the very best RPG Maker horror titles I've ever gotten to bite into. Starring David Hoover as he finds his life in shambles, his girlfriend having left him, his mom in the hospital and not in great shape, he finds himself alone in a new apartment and in questionable overall condition. Soon he finds himself haunted by the titular Crooked Man, a reference to the fairly obscure nursery rhyme of the same name. And if you aren't familiar with it, trust me, you will be, because they take the time to recite it for you several times over the course of the game. David soon meets innocent bystanders who are drawn into the battle against this ghost as well, and has to sort out his own broken, crooked life, all while helping them out. The game can be cleared with just one save file, since all the game's optional bad endings split off obvious prompts at the end of each chapter, usually terminating after you attempt to console one of the NPCs using some vague platitude which results in things usually getting worse. Think outside the box and remember that broken does not mean worthless. That's how you will uncover the full, amazing story of The Crooked Man. And if you enjoy this one, I can also wholeheartedly recommend its follow-up titles, The Sandman, The Boogeyman, and The Hanged Man. And now for some honorable mentions. Misow. While the game is competently built, it even recently got an update that allows you to extend an olive branch to most of the NPCs who meet bad ends over the game's story. It is still Japanese high schoolers and haunted Japanese school genre that I find incredibly trite. Games like this really want to be Corpse Party, and I didn't like Corpse Party. For what it is, it's still an entertaining romp that doesn't overstay its welcome. Skinwalker. This game has so much more potential than it gives itself credit for. It can literally be cleared 100% for all 3 of its endings in about 20 minutes. The idea here is actually very clever, with a monster that kills people and can assume their form and voice, so the choices the protag makes alter the order of events and potential outcomes. However, there's only 2 of these prompts in the game, resulting in one of the 3 endings. I want to see this idea expanded upon, as the very brief experience as it stands already has some fantastic atmosphere to it. Nikki. A lot of people consider this a horror game. I personally don't. It's a very atmospheric game that is strange and off-putting at times, but it's more of a walking simulator with lots of things to poke at. This may get a more robust review in the future, but since I don't consider it horror, it really wasn't in the running to make the list. Alright, with that out of the way, let's move on to number 1, Ebe. A truly stirring, original, creative take on otherworldly, abstract, and hauntingly beautiful motifs, the game simply titled Ebe tops my list, hands down. Starring a little girl, named Ebe, being transported to a dark mirror version of an art museum that her family took a day trip to, the game just oozes with style. Oh, and also oozes with paint. Taking full advantage of the art museum motif to have an eerie hybrid of puzzles and chase sequences, that will definitely make your spine tingle at least once in your time spent here. Using a rose for your character's health bars, and a delicately crafted balance between tension and occasional comedic relief, the writing and gameplay blend together to create a true masterpiece work of art. Me explaining it really will not do this game justice. This one, if no other on this list, you need to pick up for yourself, with the understanding that one in-game puzzle won't work on Windows 10. The dev added a workaround, so that won't stop you from completing the game, but just so you know, and that won't break your immersion too much. Ebe is a beautiful, wonderful horror game that doesn't need to rely on gore and jump scares to thrill and entertain you, and yes, it might even bring a tear to your eye. To go further is to spoil, so play it for yourself. It's free and awaiting you to enter the world of Guaratina. And that's my top 10 RPG Maker horror titles. What are some of yours? Leave a comment down below telling me. It's a wide and ever-growing field, and I'm sure there's plenty I've missed just by never having played them before. I'm always keen to learn about some that I might have missed. And so, this has been the Hipster Snek, bringing another top 10 for your consideration. If you liked today's episode, you can let me know by hitting that like button. And if you want more like this, you can hit the subscribe and bell icons too, so you never miss a one. You can also head over to the Tomodachi Bros Podbean and YouTube, where we do anime discussions, movie breakdowns, game streams, tabletop RPGs, and more. But be sure to join me here every week for more obscure reviews, indie excellence, top 10s, and more. And I will see you there.